Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, as I have to mess around with my image a little bit. Sorry about that. And we have a couple returning good brothers into the temple. In the red corner, we have Nikolas Totief, and in the blue corner, we have Andreas Mourelatos. I apologize for mispronouncing anything.
Oh, that's great.
And how are you doing? How are you two doing? Jeez, English monk today.
Okay. Well, we're pretty tired, I think, preparing for the big lunch. But it's just after, we're gonna chill out after this call, so I'm in a good headspace right now.
Same, very same. We've been tired for as long as we can remember, but this is our last thing for the day. So afterwards, it's rest.
Yep.
So, obviously, since both of you have been on the show previously for one of your last projects, when you decided to go introduce your brand of epic rules to the D20 formula, skipping the humble origins thing is definitely apropos here. So instead I'd like to go into kind of the origins of doing Zamanora. Since this is unlike last time, which was more of a rule set expansion, this is a setting book. So what were the chain of events that led to the creation of this?
Do you want to take it, Andreas? Or?
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one because it's quite near and dear, actually. So after our last one, which was Exordium, which was very epic, very big scale, we kind of wanted to shift in direction, both internally and sort of perhaps just teasing a system shift in a way. And we were discussing possible projects. We wanted to do something that sort of encompasses a number of things. The Zamanora includes a setting mostly, but of course there is some new. It's also a supplement in many ways. And what we did is we kind of went back to our roots, for what we wanted to do. So we thought of Balkan initially, fairy tales and folklore, which is of course us being Greek, it's quite familiar to us. And then it was a short step and a hop sort of to just Slavic folklore, which of course is extremely interesting, extremely diverse. And this is sort of a personal preference, but for me, in order to sort of delve into these sorts of tales, you need a setting, you need a place, because these stories are about the small communities and the little people, so to speak. So you can't really approach them without having these things, This is how I describe this.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is that while it does feel like a setting, we are not giving you a very specific setting. We're mostly giving you the building blocks to run your own campaigns as Zamanora. For example, we do not have a dedicated map for the setting or the world, but this is also intentional because back in the day there were actually no maps. People who were very confined in their villages or in their nearest areas, and people did not know what may lie beyond the mountain range and stuff like that. So while we do have some elements in terms of the world and some of the gods, It's not 100% a setting guide.
Yeah. Would you say in that regard that it is, instead of doing a full map and a full world, it is more focused on setting a particular tone rather than a particular world?
Yeah, definitely.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. It's not that there was an inability to create a map, but we felt that this vibe that every person may be playing in Zamanora and yet each person's map or experience will be different. We felt that it really resonated thematically with the core content and the original stories.
Given that you're building this around fairy tales and fables from, you know, folklore of the Slavic, of the Balkans, that it certainly makes sense, because, you know, a lot of those stories and a lot of fairy tales begin with some place far away, but it is never specified where that place is, which is kind of the point.
Exactly.
Yep.
But
and also that, you know, these stories always change with its telling. So when my grandmother or Nikolas's grandmother will tell you a story, it might be the same core in a different tale, and that's sort of what we wanted to capture with this idea here. It's not like nothing is very, very, you know, set in stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind, given the culture aspect, I do have to ask this, because I'd asked this about another Slavic themed project.
Mm-hmm.
Within, like, an appendix or something, are you going to be putting a pronunciation guide for some of the new terms?
Yeah, we do plan to include something like that. Actually, in one of my previous projects before I joined the Iron Chronicles, we had a yokai compendium, and we did that there too. So yeah, we are currently talking with some experts, with some history experts, about the correct naming of certain creatures. But once we nail that down, especially there are a lot of creatures that their names are kind of weird or very peculiar to mispronounce, we'll definitely include a guide.
Yeah, especially when you're when you're dealing with a kind of framing when it comes to the way words are said. That's not going to be the same vowel structure. And just for a bit of context, a few years ago I had the guy from The Journey Goes Ever on to talk about his particular game, and I kept screwing up the name. But in my defense, there wasn't a pronunciation guide for anything at the time. So when you don't have that, you have to do the best you can.
Yep.
I'm glad that that's going to be there, because there's going to be some terms that are going to throw people for a loop. Or just vowel structure. You brought up yokai earlier, and, well, vowel structure in Japanese isn't the same as in English or another language, and I could go even further with all of the language eccentricities of, say, Poland.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the good thing about Zamanora is, and the Slavic and Balkan folklore, is that most of the names are, I'd say, are pretty easy to pronounce. For example, there is the Kikimora or the Baba Yaga. There is not much room for error there. There are definitely some more nuanced examples, like the Chlevnik or something like that. But yeah, we will see after we decide exactly what the names of each creature will be. We'll definitely consider adding a pronunciation guide, especially if there are more than a couple of Chlevnik examples.
Oh yeah, I gotcha. Now, on the play side of things, I believe there are some new core mechanics that this particular. I have to use the term setting just for the sake of consistency, even
Yeah, it's
though
okay.
it's not. But there are some new mechanics that you guys are adding. I'd like to talk a bit about those, especially things like puppets.
Mhm.
I think Nikolas should tell us about puppets because it was his idea originally, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So puppet magic basically comes from. I actually cannot remember the name right now, but it is the concept that your feelings and your actions may magically affect another creature that is quite possibly beyond your reach. So it is based on the thought that everything is connected. Even items are connected to everything. Everything is connected to everything. So if, for example, I have a puppet and consider that this is my partner that is going to war, and I take care of the puppet, then my partner will have their wounds healed. Or if I want, in going outside of the puppet artistry, if I want to make it rain, I will dance in the fields, mimicking the way that the rain falls, so that I influence the weather. So this is where puppet magic comes into. It has a lot of similarities with voodoo magic, but voodoo magic originated from Egypt and the ancient Balkan area. This logic of things being connected through magic. So we're basically trying to showcase this ability. We have a system that allows you to create different puppets. Of course, for the magic to be potent, you need to have some sort of, I'll say, DNA of the creature, like a nail clipping or a tuft of hair. And this allows you to cast spells through it and affect the creature. Now, of course, this magic is neutral flavored. And you can also transmit bad spells or negative spells and negative effects. So it's all about how you use it. And we are also more familiar in pop culture with puppet magic being used for negative effects, like being cursed or pinching a needle through the doll and have the other person suffer,
Yeah.
So this is the origin of puppet magic in
Yeah.
our book.
When it comes to ceremonies and other new mechanics you're adding in, what would separate ceremonies from, say, ritual magic?
I think
Well,
Andreas yeah.
yeah, I'll for sure take that one. You've hit on two very beloved topics for the both of us. Well, the difference with ceremonies, the main big thing is that they are magic produced by non-casters, by non-magical people. So the idea behind ceremonies is, of course, from real world ceremonies and rituals, that they are the sorts of things that people will do in Zamanora in order to produce magical effects without themselves being wizards or spellcasters of any kind. So a ceremony needs at least 3 participants because you can't draw out enough magic from non-spellcasters by just having one person perform it. And of course, it takes a lot of time. So in the sort of lore of the book, most of these are parts of, festivals or celebrations or some sort of big event for the community, because they are the ways in which the common folk create effects that are what we are used to in D&D as magic, but through their own power of community and belief. So the main thing is that they don't need you to be a caster. And of course, that means that they are a way for the party, if a party learns the ceremony that's playing in Zamanora, to produce these magical effects without having to expend the resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also this all stems, the puppet magic as well as the ceremonies, this all stems back to the very foundational idea that in Zamanora, belief is power. So even if you do not have, if you're not a spellcaster, your belief may contribute into something magical happening.
All right, I can certainly get that, because we've seen a lot of that in various fiction, whether it be in fairy tales or otherwise, of belief being power. And when you mentioned the whole a piece of someone, oddly enough, I ended up being reminded of Hogfather Knight, one of these stories in the Discworld universe, because there was a minor scene about a wizard having a special compartment for his toenail clippings. Reason being, you can't be too careful. Someone gets a hold of that and they can do things with it. And one of the villains in that story, Tia Time, or Tea Time. This is Discworld, so insanity is out the door. Was assigned an assigned member from the Assassin's Guild to kill the Hogfather, basically kill Santa. And his approach to doing that was breaking into the Tooth Fairy's vault and using contagious magic to cast a spell to have a lot of people, everybody who's got a tooth from the Tooth Fairy, or vice versa, to not believe in the Hogfather. I know that's a bit roundabout for something like that, but it's immediately what came to mind. So the point is that there is precedent for that whole belief having a tangible effect, and especially mass belief.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. That actually hits the nail on the head for me. If you ask, I mean, that's exactly the sort of force in Discworld. Terry Pratchett would write that in his own very, very humorous and very fun way. But that's sort of the core idea here. That if you can get, if you can get into the Tooth Fairy's vault, well, you have a lot of power, because, like Nikolas said, you have this idea that like attracts like, and these are parts of people, and you can affect their belief, blah blah blah. So that's very close to what we're doing, albeit we are trying for a little bit of more grim approach, or more serious,
Yeah. And now with that in mind, I think the last one that I'd want to go into is the concept of the hidden world and the veil mark. What exactly does that entail?
Yeah, the hidden world is basically how do I say it? The hidden world is basically something. It's a bit vague, and it's basically where magic originates, or actually,
I can jump in on this.
Yeah, if you want, because it's more of your.
Well, the hidden world plays a lot. To start with, if we're being very, very precise, it's not very clearly defined on purpose, because it's everything that people believe to be true, but cannot see. So it encompasses all of the things that we imagine as fairies, all the things that we imagine as magic. It's sort of a vague concept to begin with. So that's why Nikolas is obviously sort of struggling to define it, because we can't really define it. So the idea there, of course, as in many cultures and many folklores, is that there is a thin veil separating the real, what we call the real world, and the hidden world behind it. And there, there in the hidden lies everything strange, everything unfamiliar. And Veilmark, what we have as a Veilmark is the way. Well, not exactly the way, but the stains that interacting with the hidden world leaves on a person. So the mark of touching beyond the veil, so to speak. So it's way. It's basically it's a new attribute. It's like another, if we're talking in D&D terms, or a new characteristic if we're talking in different systems, that sort of makes one more attuned to these sorts of things. That's how it describes it.
Basically, it's through your interaction with the hidden world, your veil mark increases, and this allows you to tap into some kind of abilities that you wouldn't normally have, and interact in special ways with the spirits and the hidden world overall. Maybe you will be able to sense them. The mechanic of the veil mark is not 100% nailed down right now. But maybe you will be able to sense them, maybe you will be able to affect them, and they will also be able to affect you more because you are more in tune with them. In my mind, it's like, I don't know if you're familiar with Bloodborne.
I am.
But,
I'm very familiar with pretty much every soul like that exists out there.
Yeah, awesome. So to me, it is kind of like insight, where once you get after a certain threshold of insight, you can see the monsters that were always there, but they can also see you. So it's kind of like that in my mind.
Yeah. It's something that you can easily build around with the line of do you believe in monsters? Because they believe in you.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Now, since you're adding about 20 subclasses with this, is it going to be a case where at least each core class is going to be getting at least one subclass?
Yeah, definitely. We're aiming for that.
All right. Obviously with a number like that, there's some that are going to get more than others, but at least one for each. So, given that, and given my particular gimmick, I have to ask if there are any subclasses for monk, because for things like druid or paladin or fighter, I can see those easily, and those have already been present in some of the stuff you've put out. Monk, that might be a little bit tricky. So, is there an example you can give me as far as a subclass for monk that you guys are planning?
I will freely admit that monk was the hardest one to find subclasses because of the theme of the book. Obviously, with the whole East Asian vibe of the 5e monk, putting into a Slavic Balkan setting was quite difficult. But I believe we did find something. I haven't actually written that though. So Nikola, if you want to say that one.
Yeah. Basically, we have some ideas because, as you said, we want every class to have at least one subclass. Since we have about 20 or whatever subclasses planned, and we are the most complete draft that we have right now is the Kuteri monk. And the Kuteri is a term from Bulgaria. It's basically people that dress up and perform traditional rituals to ward off evil spirits, or ward away. I'm not sure what's the correct word. So this mechanic of dancing, while it is a very familiar mechanic that a lot of RPGs use, was something that was missing from 5th edition. And adding it to monk, considering some of the traditions that they have and of the Kuteri have, and some of the abilities that they can produce, it felt that the Kuteri would be the best example for that. We have some other ideas in draft, but they are not that fleshed out or that directly related to a concept that is familiar with the Balkan or Slavic folklore.
Mm-hmm. That is understandable. especially given, like you said, this is going to be monk would be the hardest one to work with just because of its particular theming uh and just finding something that fits within the folklore thing that you're going with and still would fit the monk. That's, I guess, akin to spinning plates.
Yeah, kind of.
But I had asked earlier about how ceremonies are differentiated from spells. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a similar thing when it comes to curses.
Mm-hmm. So basically, curses, they are a bit of a minor chapter, one would say. Not in terms of size, but in terms of how it kind of affects gameplay in my mind. So basically, these curses will also be added in the bestow curse spell for what D&D is for the D&D part of the system.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them can be actually made manifest through belief, as we mentioned earlier. So there will be some effects that will allow spontaneous curses to take place. So these do act kind of like a spell, but the way that they are introduced into the world is different, and they also act as options to the bestow curse spell, again specifically for the D&D part of the game.
Yeah, I can certainly get that.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to add about the curses. So just they sort of play in together with the other aspects of magic that we're introducing. So, for example, you can definitely cast a curse through a puppet.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a puppet and you have the link, no, it is also the sort of magic that can be cast through a puppet. But in order to keep the folkloric and this fairy tale aspect of it, we also added the spontaneous casting, which is, in a moment of great stress or peril, or perhaps, what's the word? In a moment when one is wronged greatly, they might say, they might cast a curse upon someone else's bloodline, and this thing takes effect through the power of very strong emotion or belief. So that's sort of how we went with, and I'm not sure, I don't think we have a curse that can be cast through a ceremony yet, but that might not be out of the picture, but I don't think we have that yet.
No, we don't have something like that yet. And also another thing that separates the curses from typical spells is that there are conditions that can lift a curse. So it is not just a matter of succeeding on your saving throw. It is a matter of forsaking your how do you say it? Maybe leaving behind something very valuable to you in order to get rid of the curse, or correcting a wrong that you did. It's not just succeed on a DC 15 saving throw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. And when I looked at the descriptions of some of the ones you had sent me, it's a lot of manifesting someone's misdeeds into that form.
Yep.
And now, with that in mind, since you mentioned the D&D version and hinted at that, that's as good a time as any to bring up something that dropped on my lap about this game a few days before we nailed down the date and time to do this, and that is the partnership that you guys have with Legend of the Mist. Is it a case where the book is going to be compatible with both 5e D&D and Legend in the Mist?
Well, the book is going to feature both. It will be as much as D&D as it is Legend in the Mist. Now, it will be written in the latest edition of Dungeons & Dragons. I believe the clips that you saw or the samples that you viewed were in 5e language. They will be converted into D&D 2024, and in the same book, we will also include the Legend in the Mist mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be, for me, this is very exciting because it will allow each system. For example, if you're playing D&D and you are going into battle with the monster, you can see in the way that the Legend of the Mist introduces its threats, you can see maybe some details that will inspire you to deal with some situations that you couldn't normally imagine in a D&D game. So we're very excited about showcasing both systems in the same page, and we're also very excited to introduce people to more tabletop RPGs, especially TTRPG that our team really loves. Yeah, so this is the idea behind it all. It will not be two separate books. And of course, since D&D 2024 is backwards compatible with 5e, our book will also be compatible for 5e. We will not be introducing things that will break 5e
Mm-hmm.
or something like that.
Yeah, I can certainly get that.
Mm-hmm.
So long as it's able to be referenced easily, because I remember those two system books back in the early 2000s in like 7C and L5R that have somewhat been in the hall of we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Because of how not because they were badly designed or anything like that, but just how they were organized.
Yeah, thankfully others have made these mistakes before us, so we have a lot of resources to study so that we do this right.
Mm-hmm. I remember someone saying the best way to learn a craft is to watch other people fall into the pitfalls.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And well, that seems to be the approach that Vincent Flanders has been doing for over 15 years.
Yeah.
Flanders' whole thing is if you're not familiar, is teaching good web design by showing bad web design. So it's in that same principle of learning from others' mistakes. But now with that in mind, I did see that one thing that you made a big deal of when it comes to like magic items and magic components is mushrooms. Like you've got a whole section. It seems you've got a whole section just on Zamanora mushrooms and the varieties of them.
Yep. Well, this is yes, it is one of the new mechanics that we wanted to introduce. We felt that we needed to introduce something that is unique to the world of Zamanora, and foraging is a really big thing from back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought that mushrooms were very much in theme with the source material. They act kind of like potions, but potions that you can find in the wild, and you also have a lot of different ways that you can ingest them. For example, we will have some mechanics that you will be able to make powders out of these mushrooms and use them for different effects.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, some of them are harmful, some of them are beneficial, some of them are whatever, but they are all interesting. So that was the goal with the mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as big of a chapter as some of the others, but we really felt that it would bring more authenticity to the setting, and also this weird game of finding a weird looking mushroom. Am I going to take the time to identify what it is? Am I just going to try it now and possibly die within the end of the day?
Mm-hmm.
This sort of fairy tale Alice in Wonderland kind of thing. What does this mushroom do? Just does it me,
Yeah.
of course, with some of them, if the players know the name of the thing, it'd be a case of why the hell would you eat that?
Yeah. Well, you can use it to your enemies. You can serve it up to them.
Yeah, that prompted us a particular question of if someone. Do you have rules about what would happen if someone was mixing different types of mushrooms in, say, a stew or some kind of food like that?
I'm not 100% sure. The mushroom guy is currently not in the call, so but I was the puppet guy. Andreas is the ceremonies guy.
Our
So I'm not
mycologist is unfortunately missing.
Yeah, yeah. The cook is not in the house tonight. So it does sound like a very interesting idea. I think that it will be a bit, unless there is an elegant way to do it, it would be a bit too extensive.
Yeah.
But you have given us food for thought, or mushroom for thought.
Quite literally in this case.
Yeah, yeah.
But now, when it comes to the adventure locales, which you talk about there being 10 of in the book, is it a case where where they're akin to, each of them would be akin to like a mini gazetteer of just being a few pages of an idea of a place, as opposed to going to excessive detail with maps and all that?
Well, I'd say the answer is somewhere in between. You see, the adventure locales, each one has its own story. So each locale is either a village or a settlement or some specific place, you know. So with it has its own people, it has its own sort of things that are going on. So there is the concept of kind of a gazetteer, kind of a guide to it. Mm-hmm. If we think of it in game terms, it could be sort of like a mini campaign. So like each locale could be a one-shot or a two-shot story. But again, we have veered away from making maps for these places, as we have veered away kind of on purpose, for making maps for anything. Just to keep it. I don't know if I should say that here. It's a bit of a segue to something else. Probably Nikolas. I'll let him say it if he wants to. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's each one sort of it has its own story, so you can play it as is, and they are both there to showcase the vibe and the content of the book, because this sort of small village community is exactly what we're going for, describing, you know, the stories of the small folk, the stories of which are contained in a single area. And at the same time, of course, every adventure locale features a lot of creatures from within the book, ceremonies, spells, etc., etc.
Yeah, we do aim to have these be more of a sandboxy feeling than a specific story. There are many stories in each adventure locale, but we do want for the players and the game master to approach them like in a more sandboxing sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I was hinting at with the idea of a gazetteer or even a zine-like setting. And I'm totally not saying that because it is zine, because this month is apparently Zine Quest.
Yeah.
Total coincidence, I swear. But when it comes now, one of the things that I was also a bit curious is the fact that one of the add-ons you're doing is an adventure deck for going GMless. I know it says DMless because that's the term in D&D, but I always go with GM just because I'm not paid by the syllable.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I think that's what. Do you want to ask something specific on it, or do you want us to just discuss on it?
More how that. Obviously, not going into any specific rules, but just how the loop for lack of a better term, would work with that with that deck.
Yeah, so I think that's what Andreas was hitting earlier. Was that what you're saying, that it's going to be a hint for later?
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, we are developing a system, a card system that will allow you to play GM-less adventures, or even solo adventures. And you can even use it to just spice up some sessions. Maybe the DM is not very well prepared for a session, or maybe they want to be surprised as well from the results. So the idea is that there is an active board, and you draw cards and add to that active board. And each card may change the weather. It may introduce a location that has certain events on it. And these events may even span from the entire session to many sessions, because some of them, I think we call them stories, build upon each other. For example, you draw the card of being ambushed by some bandits, and if you investigate the bandits, you may find the bandit camp, which is a different card that you are allowed to then explore. And these may build on to even more steps along the way. And this is also the best way that we have found to introduce a map to this system, because one of the ways that you will be able to use the deck is you will have a blank sheet of paper that has hexagonal blocks, I guess.
Hex grid.
Yeah, a hex grid, sorry, yeah. You will have a hex grid, and by drawing these cards, you will be able to sort of randomize a map for yourself and for your own campaign. And this also comes into play that we want people that play in Zamanora to experience similar stories, but each in their own unique way, sort of like a roguelite game, but bigger in scope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it comes to the total size when it comes to the book, what are you guys shooting for as far as a page count, or is that still up in the air right now?
Yeah, well, hopefully we will successfully fund. Hopefully we will unlock some stretch goals. The stretch goals will definitely affect the final page count of the book. Mm-hmm. But as is now, we are not looking at less than 400 pages. And so it will be more than 400 pages. Mm-hmm. And this has led us to also break the contents of the book into basically GM guide and a player's handbook. Mm-hmm. So the final title of Zamanora will be two different books. One that focuses more on the new mechanics and for the adventurer, so subclasses, etc. And the other will be more game master focused, in regards to introducing a bestiary, so that the players are not also spoiled by knowing what each monster does, and also introducing the adventure locales, which are pretty important for the GM only to know.
Yep, I can certainly get that. Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, I know that the Kickstarter hasn't launched yet. I believe it is launching soon. But what are you shooting for the launch date for the Kickstarter, and how long do you plan on running it for?
Well, the Kickstarter is scheduled to launch March 4th, so unless something goes extremely horrible, we will be launching March 4th, which is also, as I found out, it's Game Master's Day.
It is?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was a lucky coincidence because we wanted to release earlier, but our release would coincide with the monster manual for fifth edition, no, for the newest edition of D&D, and we didn't want to, release the same day as the monster manual for the newest edition. So we pushed it 1 week later, and we will be launching on Game Masters Day. And we will be running for 30 days, so April 3rd, I believe it is, or April 4th, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. Fortunately, you're not ending it on April Fool's Day. That would have been been hilarious and horrifying.
True.
especially since, well, in my case, as soon as April Fool's Day comes along, everyone who knows me starts cringing.
Yeah. Oh. Okay.
Because they know I have a reputation as the absolute worst. But
we will get advice from you on what we should announce that day on the Kickstarter.
True.
Well, if the Kickstarter is ending on April 3rd, then there's no need, especially since I the stuff I do on April Fool's Day isn't exactly stuff that's exactly fitting for this particular campaign. But those are stories I've gone over in the past. But that's another kettle of fish as it is. But with that said,
We'll have to.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
With that, did you say something?
Oh, you.
Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to see. We'll have to pay close attention to what you're doing this April Fools.
It's not something you're going to see on this profile. I can guarantee you that.
Okay.
But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank both of you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens here. And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Thank you so much for having us. It was great to be here, and actually, you've given us a few good ideas. So maybe we have to go think about mixing up mushrooms in a stew, and that will certainly encourage some drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having us. As for the last time, as in the last time, your questions are very poignant. And they are fun to consider, and they do make us think a little bit more. So yeah, thanks for the questions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously, anytime you guys see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged. And, of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!